The World Soul by H. Fielding Hall. Copyright 1913, second edition. Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Pilate said to him, What is truth? Jesus said, Truth is from heaven. Pilate said, Therefore truth is not on earth? Jesus said to Pilate, Believe that truth is on earth among those who, when they have the power of judgment, are governed by truth and form right judgment. Preface. All knowledge is built up from below. It is made up of facts, and facts only. It cannot be pulled down from above. You cannot formulate an hypothesis, say of God, with attributes and qualities, frame a theory on that, and fit facts to your theory. You only destroy your facts. But you cannot confine yourself to facts alone. By doing that, you only accumulate a formless mass which is of little use. You must arrange your facts, and to do this, when you have a large quantity of facts, all verified and correct, you must frame a theory based on an hypothesis to connect them. If it does so, then even if the hypothesis be unverifiable in itself and inconceivable, as all hypotheses must be, it is of great value. It is, in fact, a necessity and a truth. But it is true only insofar as it does explain and coordinate phenomenon and no further. Should new phenomenon appear, which the theory will not connect, then you must modify it till it does, or abandon it if it will not. You must never hold to a theory or an hypothesis that is denied by facts. Science, when confronted with the phenomenon of heat and light and gravity and other energies, framed for itself the hypothesis of an imponderable, invisible, incompressible ether filling all space, which is the medium of all energy. That hypothesis seems now to have been abandoned, as new phenomenon appear which were inconsistent with it, and science is looking for a new hypothesis to connect the phenomenon of energy. The phenomenon of life likewise require a theory and an hypothesis to coordinate and explain them. Religions do not do so and have been abandoned. At first, Darwin and his school were content with collecting facts alone, and indeed that was the first necessity. For the old mistaken teleologies had caused facts to be overlooked or misinterpreted. It was necessary to investigate them afresh with an absolutely unprejudiced mind, intent on truth and truth alone. But there now arises the need for a theory to explain these many verified phenomenon of life. And as you can no more have a theory without an hypothesis than a curve without a focus, science is beginning to frame one. It denied any purpose or any teleological principle proceeding from an outside power creating the world. It still denies this, but it feels the absolute necessity for a teleology within the world working towards a desired end. Carl von Baer, in his criticism of Darwin's hypothesis of natural selection, had made the remark that the followers of the hypothesis being brought more and more to deny all purpose in evolution, scientific recognition could be granted to the hypothesis only if it recognized an universal tendency towards reaching a certain purpose. To which Wiseman, after having quoted these words with approval, as also those of Hartzman, who considered Darwinian evolution as a mad chaos of stupid and capricious forces, added that it was necessary indeed to combine in a theory of evolution the teleological principle with a mechanical execution. Formerly it was thought impossible. Now he was going to prove that it was unavoidable. Barr, he wrote, is right, for the phenomenon of organic and inorganic nature cannot possibly be conceived as a work of accident. They can be conceived only as a process directed in accordance with a certain great plan. And he came to this conclusion. We must not hesitate to recognize the existence of a force acting with a purpose. Only we must not represent it as directly interfering in the mechanism of the universe. We must conceive it rather behind the mechanism as a final cause. Why should we not return to the idea of matter endowed with soul? It is exactly this world soul and its plan which science is seeking that I explain in this book, only that I find it in the world and in matter, not behind. Now a hypothesis must be fairly considered. No hypothesis can be verified in itself. It cannot be proved or disproved directly. An hypothesis is that which is necessary to any theory which coordinates and explains phenomenon, and its proof or disproof lies not in its being conceivable or verifiable in itself, but in whether it does or does not fulfill its purpose. The hypothesis of the world soul does coordinate and explain phenomenon. It is a complete explanation of all phenomenon of life, of thought, of all the religions, of the life of Jesus, and of his teaching. It is not dualism, for it is quite impossible to separate soul and matter. The world soul permeates matter and expresses itself through matter. Neither is it monism, for you can separate soul from the organism in which it is expressed. To take the simile of the electric lamp, the light is not generated within the globe. Turn off the current, and though the globe is unhurt, the light ceases. On the other hand, the lamp may be broken or worn out. The light will disappear, yet the current continues, and given another lamp will shine as brightly as ever, or more so if the lamp be a better one. The reader will judge for himself whether the hypothesis fulfills the purpose. If so, it is true. The phenomenon are given, then the inevitability of the hypothesis, and finally a demonstration of how the use of this hypothesis does unlock secrets supposed to be forever hidden. So much for the purpose of the book. But care must be taken to understand the language. However general and abstract thought may be, it cannot be clearly expressed in abstract terms. Energy is universal, but can only be manifested and understood when embodied in individual forms of matter. It is the same with thought. It must have a local habitation and a name. Trope and figure are inevitable and necessary. Therefore, I must express my thought in figures. But I beg the reader not to go beyond the record and read into my terminology things I do not mean. The world soul is that which pervades all living matter and is the cause and explanation of all phenomenon of life. God, if there be one, is that which lies behind the world. I attribute to neither God nor the world soul qualities other than those which are inevitable in them as the causes of these phenomenon. I am not concerned to prove either. I am agnostic in these matters as in all others. What I am concerned to do is to find the exact truth of things and to connect them into a coherent whole. It seems to me that the hypothesis of the world soul does this. If so, it must be true. If not, let us find the truth. I have to use figurative language, concrete expressions for what are really unknown causes of observed phenomenon. To speak of body, soul, and spirit as distinct, whereas ultimately they are all expressions of one emotion in one matter, though the emotion may not be generated in the body wherein it appears. To talk of the forgiveness of sins, when I mean that the consequences of certain sins do not persist, a flicker of the light caused by a flaw in the glass of the electric lamp does not persist in the electricity after the lamp is broken. It is a sin of the vehicle, not the energy. To speak of the eternal life of the soul coming from the world soul and returning as a drop of water coming from and going to the sea, though we can but dimly comprehend how one individual soul can remain distinct and yet be blended with all other souls. I cannot help this. Thought itself and the terminology of thought are not yet sufficiently advanced to permit figures to be abandoned. The attempt only leads to confusion. Thought can no more be expressed without imagery than soul without flesh. But the reader must take the flesh for the soul. He can, if he likes, prevent himself from being misled, not by me, but by himself. It was not the legend writers who misled the churches into believing in a real ark. It was the churches who misled themselves. In the meanings assigned to words, there lies a very potent but often unsuspected cause of difference of opinion. Words have in themselves clear and definite meanings, but in current use, these meanings are often widened into a vagueness that deprives the word of all accuracy, or narrowed or a totally wrong one is given. To understand a writer's ideas, it is of the first necessity to comprehend his language, and as I have endeavored always to use a word in its right meaning, I would ask the reader to be sure he is doing the same. For instance, I would refer to what I say about sympathy in several places. To the uncritical thinker, sympathy is just feeling sorry for people, and as such an emotion has frequently little value, they condemn sympathy. It is indeed often only sentimentalism, but sympathy really means feeling not for people, but with them. It means the capacity to put yourself with your power of thought, your knowledge of the other side, your freedom from their personal bias, into a similar position to theirs and analyzing it. Seeing what they see, feeling what they feel, and understanding it as they cannot. It is being glad with them as well as sorry. That is sympathy, and no quality in the world is so rare. No quality is so urgently needed to correct the abuses of the world. Half our unnecessary misery is due to not being sorry when we ought. The other half to well-meaning stupid, being sorry for others, without understanding them, and so doing more harm than good. It is what makes friends often more dangerous than enemies. Therefore, I would ask the reader, in case of difference of opinion, to be quite sure he understands what I mean and the way in which I use words. I have appended a glossary of the principal words, and in case of doubt, I would suggest a reference to it, for dictionaries are not much use. They give the current meanings of words, and if a word have drifted from a clear and definite meaning to an indefinite one, they make matters worse by recording the popular interpretation. I have a personal affection for words. I sympathize with them in the hardships they have to undergo and the misapprehensions they have to put up with. They are very willing to help us if we are good to them, but they take their revenge on the unsympathetic. They are not dead, but very living things, and they know their friends and enemies. Accuracy in the expression of thought is an essential to right thinking in ourselves and understanding the thought of others. So much for the imagery and language. I have now a word to say of the form of the whole book. An architect, when he builds a house that he thinks people will live in, has to consider the first and general impression it will make upon those who come to see it. The essential is that the design be clear and in proportion. Many things are necessary that the house be attractive and comfortable. Each detail must have been carefully thought out, but no detail should obtrude itself nor be out of proportion. On some details, he may have spent more time and trouble than on far more conspicuous parts, but that time and effort must not be evident. All must blend into one whole. Later, he who inspects should want to verify each detail, but no detail should be conspicuous at first. That has been my difficulty with this book. In working out such a new line of thought, innumerable details have had to be thought out from the beginning afresh. Many of them are most important. In working them out, I have spent not only time and thought, but ink and paper and typoscript. I have written them out at length very many times. They have been problems worked out, pen in hand. When solved, the difficulty was to assign them their due proportion in the whole, to subordinate them to the general design. They had cost me so much work they seemed worthy of a conspicuous place. In former drafts of this book, of which I have written several, I have given pages to what is now condensed into a few lines. I have written chapters on what are now only a few pages. I have had to modify, to prune, to content myself often with stating subordinate facts, not proving them. I say this that the reader may not think that because, for instance, I condense what I have to say about philosophy into a page or two, because when I say angels are only a figure of speech for thought, I simply state the fact, because I do not fully explain the origin of the degrading practice of circumcision and its effect in deranging the nervous system, because in the account of the crucifixion I do not in the text enter into a full account of the insurmountable known cases of insensibility simulating death. Therefore I have not worked out these matters, and even very often written them out in complete detail. I have done so. I have taken nothing for granted, nor scamped anything. When necessary, I have added appendices, but even these I have done as rarely as possible. That the reader may comprehend the central thought, I have had to reduce all minor matters to the smallest compass. The trees must not obstruct the sight of the wood. That must first be understood. Later, perhaps, I will elaborate all these details in another book. Again, I might have quoted indefinitely in defense of my various propositions from innumerable writers. For instance, for what I say about thought being not reason but sight, I might have referred to Locke. For the fatality of act, to the wisdom of the East, which declared that every man's fate I have written on his forehead, and to Goethe, for crime, to Lombroso, Holmes, Devon, and the publications of the Pentalogical Society, for the necessity of recognizing that the evil of life, not our stupidity or self-righteousness, is here for our good, to make us face life as it is and conquer it, and that being ashamed of evil is being ashamed of him who made it. To Isaiah, I form the light and create the darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. And so on indefinitely. I am indeed conscious that until I come to the life and teaching of Jesus, I have nowhere said anything new. And as regards him, what I say is the inevitable result of the previous facts. Seeing one has enabled me to see the other. All I have done is to coordinate what has been already seen. I have almost entirely refrained from quotation because you cannot prove such matters by authority. I have had to take all my facts from life, to think them out for myself, and take my conclusions back to life for confirmation or denial. If the reader wants to get any use from them, he will have to do the same. For the object of life is to understand life as we live it, not to know what people have said about it. No two people see life in all its details exactly the same, because no two people look from exactly the same standpoint. To see life clearly, you must learn to see for yourself. The value of books is not to give you ready-made opinions, but to help you to think for yourself by showing you how to think and opening up new aspects. Thought is life, and as no one else can live for you, no one else can think for you. End of preface of the book The World Soul by H. Fielding Hall, narrated by Rex King.